A to B உங்கள் பசியார எங்கள் ருசி பேசும்.
சிறந்த வடிவமைப்பு, அநேக ரகங்கள், நியாயமான விலை, உன்னத தயாரிப்பு. உங்கள் கனவுகள் மெய்ப்பட சுகமான நித்திரையின் ரகசியத்தை கண்டறிய சுஹானா மெத்தைகள்.
7 தலைமுறைகள் பாரம்பரியமிக்க ஒரே சித்த மருத்துவ ஸ்தாபனம் சேலம் சிவராஜ் சித்த வைத்தியசாலை. இப்பொழுது சேலம், ஈரோடு, சென்னை, ஹொசூர், திருப்பத்தூரில் தினசரி மருத்துவரை சந்திக்கலாம். தொடர்புக்கு 9842722500.
Hello and welcome to Chanakya English. Today we have a Dharmic soul. He hails from a lineage of Vedic scholars who have moved on to secular occupations. He has even worked in corporate world for almost 30 years, and he's been in directorial positions in research and analytics. Now he's moved into the Dharma living, and he is working on articulating the Bharatiya civilization. It is none other than the author of Brahman Genocide, the precursor to Hindu extinction, Sir Asi or Mahalingam sir. Hello sir. Welcome.
Namaste Nirmalaji. Namaste to the viewers of Chanakya TV.
Okay. So sir, let's start off talking about what made you write this book.
That's an interesting question. After being in the corporate world, there was an order from our dharmacharyas for me to do what is called as a Shrauta Karmas, which is part of a traditional ritual based stuff. Well, I was part of that. I had to visit a lot of places in India, including very remote places where I had first-hand experience of meeting and interacting with many communities, especially the Brahmin community members. Then there was a huge dichotomy between what we see and read in all our books or in social media or in many other sources to how the actual living conditions or what is the actual problems faced by them are. There was a huge difference in that. Then there was guidance from the Dharmacharya for me to take this up as a cause and then do this work. So that is how the guiding happened.
Okay, so the book Brahman Genocide, I think in bigger font it says Brahman Genocide, but at the bottom it says the precursor to Hindu extinction, right? But just looking at that Brahman Genocide, the genocide word, it throws many of us away, like as readers. So to the viewers, can you give a very basic idea why you chose the word genocide there?
Thank you. That's an interesting question. The word genocide has been used after careful evaluation of facts and application of mind. Because when we use the word genocide, there is a standard model, which is a 10-stage model available in worldwide view. It was an 8-stage model started by, I think, Professor Stanton, and then it actually moved on into 10-stage model. In this 10-stage model, there are stages which we call as classification, symbolization, discrimination, dehumanization, like that. All these different stages have been categorized, and for each there is a characteristic which has been given, how these stages are. Now, we have actually mapped these stages to the current scenario faced by the Brahmins. We are not even talking about history some 400 years back, 500 years back. The current state of Brahmin state today, as we call it, the sthiti now. And we have mapped it to see that there is a serious overlap and significant overlap in what we see as the textual theory in terms of the genocide model and what is actually happening in reality. And the interesting point is that these stages, though we call them like classification, symbolization in a sequential order, what they are saying is these stages can overlap and it can actually happen sometimes in parallel also. So it is not that we have to go in defined stages. It can keep happening in a cyclical way. So hence this model is quite valid, and sometimes even people ask me this question, is it something like you wanted to catch the eye of the people, is it something which is like more sensationalism? No, we explained to them that as part of this effort, we also created a website called BrahminGenocide.org. So your viewers can Google search it. It is BrahminGenocide.org. In that, we have actually talked about the genocide stages. We have actually shown how that worldwide model is and what are those 10 stages and how we have mapped it. So one does not even have to buy the book to actually go through these stages and get themselves a view of what exactly is meant by the Brahmin genocide.
Okay.
I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you did. And so the genocide part is, I guess, there, but how about the Brahmin? I think this is the first book that talks about Brahmin discrimination in a way, right? The Brahmin hate. Because many people have talked about the Hindu hate, but not the Brahmin hate to be specific. But why Brahmin hate? Because Muslims also, I think there was an article last year, and I don't know why, if it's a coincidence or something, but it was Stanston, the same person you just mentioned.
Correct.
He wrote about the possibility of a Muslim genocide. So this is possible for all minorities, right? Muslims, Christians, Dalits, right? So why just the Brahmin perspective?
The focus of this entire book is to talk about what we call as a civilizational battle. Because this is not an event to be seen in isolation, that we are talking about a particular community and its problem. We have to see why this hate started. It is very important for us to understand that what we call as the origins or the root of this issue. It comes from a civilizational narrative which was built during the colonial era. It served the purpose of the colonial masters in two ways. A, they could divide and rule the Indian society, especially the Hindu society, and that could help them to make their ruling over us much more easier and effective. This was especially true after the first freedom movement which happened, the 1857 happened. Now, the second thing which helped them is also to say that this is a barbaric people. These are people who are having so much of discrimination and issues, and hence we need to have a civilizing mission. So we are here to bring civilization. That helped them to also get it positioned with their bosses in the England, so to speak, or their authorities in the UK at that time. Hence, after the Indian independence, what happened was there were some colonial stooges who were hand in glove with British at that time for whatever their selfish reasons may be, or maybe they were genuinely attracted towards the issues or they genuinely believed it. But after the independence, these colonial stooges continued propagating that, and then many others have also joined into this. And there are now even non-state actors, we call it, they are getting involved. There are even handles from, say, our neighboring countries which are talking about Brahmins, which we have documented in our book also. Hence, this is an overall issue which is happening. This is at a higher level. Now, why is it only targeting Brahmins? Because traditionally Brahmins have been seen, at least by the colonials, as the traditional knowledge system custodians. And hence they have to be first targeted, and they have to be discredited, then they have to be completely sidelined from the Hindu society, and then the rest of the Hindu society can also be divided this way. This was the plan. But the plan did not work out, as we all know, because they had to, colonial rule has to go back. But the process is still remaining. Whatever is the colonial lens or the drishti we call it, that is still being used, and now it is getting academic cover as well. Hence, this problem is compounding. Now, the third point we need to understand is, when we say Brahmin genocide, it is only not talking about Brahmins, because this civilization belongs to each and every one of us. It is not a particular group's property. Every community carries its civilizational memory. By their practices, by their belief systems, by their rituals and ceremonies, by their values which they give it to the next generation. So every community has a role to play in this civilization, and it belongs to each and every one of us. But since Brahmins will be first targeted, the same template will be used for the next successive caste. It can be used for the next successive caste. So today the word Brahminism can be used as a catch-all phrase to go and then maybe attack Brahmins. The next is much easier to say he is casteist, right? That's it. Then the other person has to defend himself, he or she has to defend saying we are not casteist, right? So this template can be used in a iterative way. Each and every community can be targeted this way. Hence, it will fracture the Hindu society, and that's why, though we call it as Brahmin genocide, we also have put in the word below, the tagline below, which is the precursor to Hindu extinction. Okay. So it is going to apply for each and every of the Bharatiya civilizational members. Hence, for all those who are viewing this, please view it not just as a one community's issue. it is an issue for the entire civilization and memory at stake. And why is it important? Then the next question which comes up is why? What is so important about this civilization? Please realize that our civilization has stood the test of time when there was so much slavery around the whole world. Right? Indians were not having those kind of major issues. This civilization till 16th century, which has been put in, I think Angus Madison has said that they have analyzed and then said till 16th century we were living with so much of GDP. India was one of the top GDP countries in the world. So, and more importantly, we are the only link to the ancient surviving civilization, because the Vedas, as they are being chanted today, were exactly what they were being chanted 2000 or 3000 or 4000 years ago. Because for us, we don't put a time into that. For us, it is Anathi. But even the Western scholars will call it as 4000 years back. Hence, Bharatiya civilization is something which I think we all need to aim to defend it. And also the last thing is, we talk so much about diversity today, and this is one of the most pluralistic and diversity inclusive civilizations in the world. Hence there is a need for all of us to come together and protect it.
Just listening you talk, something came up just for imagination purposes. If you think Brahmins were completely eradicated, suppose, who do you think is the next caste that they could go to? From your analysis of data, who do you think is the next target?
That's we can only surmise.
Correct.
And it will be, I think, what each and every, say, geography thinks is the dominant caste. Because if you go through the Indian history, each and every state or each and every province had what we know as a dominant caste.
Correct.
So this will be always the framework is what we call as oppressed framework. And this is a altogether different civilizational right. So it is not about whether that is right or wrong, but I am just saying it is different. Ours is a duty-based civilization. Right? Every one member of the civilization, every community is supposed to have their duties. We only talk about duties. So even in Tamil, we have all these poems which say, Indru Purandarandal, Taike Kadane, Sandro Nakadal, Tandeke Kadane. So it says, mother has got a duty, father has got a duty, king has got a duty, each and every member has got a duty.
Okay.
So that oppressed framework is a right. So I am oppressed, so I have a right to get something. So that will be very divisive, as the many Western societies are finding themselves today to be, that framework can actually create a cyclical spree of violence and hatred towards each community. So we need to find a way to address those challenges.
Okay, so if I hear you correctly, whoever is the dominant caste will probably be the next target.
That's
but
correct.
We want to figure out how to stop this ahead of time so it doesn't become a chain.
That's correct.
Okay.
So it should not become consuming one after another, like what we call as a forest fire, right? So
Correct.
Each and every state gets consumed.
Correct. So why is the Brahmins first in line? I think it is also because we have the Brahmin group has they're closer to the culture, right? They uphold the culture much more. I guess the rest of the community has become a little bit more westernized, maybe, correct?
That is correct. And also it is a legacy of the colonial, because the colonials somehow felt that when they came in 300, 400 years back, for them, the person who they felt were the bigger threat to their narrative here in India were the priests. And they also came from their European experience, where for them there is this priestly class, right, which need to be, because they are worshipping false gods, hence this false priest is leading them to these false gods. So they had these belief systems at that point of time, and hence the Brahmins had to be targeted first. So it was a colonial legacy.
Okay. And you also in your book talk about social media having messages talking about Brahmin Holocaust.
Correct.
Right? Things that go on social media, can't they be dismissed as just some immature talk? Why take it seriously?
Well, few issues about it. If it is a few random cases which we are picking from here, yes, one can always say that maybe are we kind of over dramatizing this, or are we kind of being too sensitive about this? But in our book, we have gone to show how so many different sections of the society, including mainstream media, including NGOs, including public personalities, they are indulging in this kind of hate speech. Right? And it is not one casual reference, and if you, I'm sure you would have gone through the book, there are not even one instance of some person reacting. We have seen multiple cases where things get, same person keeps talking about it, especially if it's a celebrity or even if it is an organization. Now, the second part of the answer will be, what is it that if people are casually talking, ranting, is it harmless? No. There are research studies which say that online violence can lead to offline physical violence. So we have narrated it in the book. There is a study which is done on the Facebook in postings. I think in Germany it was. They have collected the data of anti-refugee sentiments in Germany on the social media, and they are correlating it to violence. Whenever there is a spike here of the online hate, there is an attack on the immigrants, anti-refugees which is happening. So there is a correlation they are able to see. And second is, even if we see the NATO and other defense forces, I think there is one manual we have put in the book where the defense forces are also saying that there is a defense manual which says that aggression online also leads to aggression offline. Right? So even countries are using it as part of the psychological warfare to create enmity between different groups, and it happens. And some psychologists are also, when I talk to them, they talk about something called as gunny sacking. What gunny sacking does is, it literally means, like for Tamil viewers they may know, it's called koni pai, they call it. So people keep accumulating all this hate. Right? So many of us are exposed to this hate about a particular community. At some point of time, something is going to give, something is going to snap. And it happened in the case of Jews in Germany. It did not happen overnight. There was a systematic othering of them, saying they are from a different race, and all the hate was being slowly pumped into that. At some point, the mass, what we call as the common public, got so annoyed with it. At some point, they will say, oh, their existence itself is becoming a threat to our existence. So it goes into that stage, and that's why they call it as a dehumanization stage, where in the genocide model, where they don't even see the other person as belonging to the human. Right? Because that is when the genocide threshold gets crossed. When people have a natural aversion to any violence, a common man or a woman will not have this kind of thought to have any violence. Right? They want to live a friendly life, they want to live their own lives, their own ambition, they want to pursue. But how do they slowly become immunized to this when they start perceiving that other person is not human, there is this community which is not human, they are out to create problems for us, then they think it's a self-protection for them, and hence they go for, that is when the genocide enablers come in, they act, and then they start preparing the ground for a mass genocide. So this has been documented, at least in the Jewish case, we can see a lot of parallels between what's happening today here to what has happened to the Jews in the Nazi Germany.
And we do know this is also funded, right? I mean, it's not a people mindset. It is also many people are funding it for this to happen.
That's correct. That's correct, because we have seen some videos where a lot of time gets invested into this hate, and then we have to question this, where is this funding coming from? Correct. There is so much of bigger issues in India. We are talking about unemployment issues. We are talking about people having still not having 3 times a meal or not even 1 meal a day. We are progressing, but are we still there? No. Right? But then where is all this funding coming from to perpetuate this kind of hate, and people are spending money and time on this? Where is this coming from? That needs to be investigated, especially if they are coming from foreign offshores.
Correct. And it makes it worse when our politicians also support that, right? We've heard a lot of people saying Sanatana Dharma eradication. We've had our DMK spokesperson Rajiv Gandhi talk about literally killing Tamil Brahmins, because that was what Periyar had asked for in 1970s. So things like that probably is making it worse, I would assume.
See, our focus in our book has been not to get into the political space, that says, because that is not something which we are focusing on today. Our focus is to go to our larger community today, because there is this silent majority, we call it, of the people who are all well-meaning. So our appeal is more towards them, to say this is a hate speech which is happening. It is being documented systematically in our book. We are showing that there is a genocide model and we are mapping it into the genocide. So what is the course of action we as a country should take? Where will we draw the boundaries? The Supreme Court has also come very clearly saying that hate speech should be stopped. In fact, I think in one of the judgments they have said dignity is more important to a person than their person's even health or wealth or anything, so dignity has to be protected. So courts are saying that, but still we see in social media and others, people are just making all this speech about Brahmins, and when we see it with other communities, somehow there is this feeling which is coming to us that why Brahmin hate is being given a free pass. Is there a free pass? Right? That is the question. We don't even want to assume there is a free pass, but it appears to us that there is a free pass. So we want to put the question in front of our countrymen and then say, yes, we all are part of the same family as one Indian family, Bharatiya family. Now there is something happening in one part of the house. A particular section, one part of the house is being targeted. What is the response from all of us to do that? Are we going to ignore it or are we going to address it?
But do we really have that unity, especially even in Hindus, not just Brahmins? Do we have that unity to uphold that, I guess, that, how do I say it, that counter, right? Can we really take up that counter?
That's an interesting question. Yes, I do believe yes. What is stopping us is many of the people who are indulging in hate. I don't know whether many is a qualification or some, because we have not measured it. At least some of them to us have come from what we call as deracinated roots. They have kind of imbibed all this hate literature which is out there, and they have no time to verify. And it is quite, because it is coming from consistent sources. They see it in some textbooks, they see it in some public sphere, they see famous personalities talking about it, about Brahmin hate. Then they tend to believe that maybe so many sources are telling me this. Right? They say a lie repeated 100 times becomes a truth. Right? Then with all this attention span, short attention span, nowadays people have only 2 minutes to read even see a video. People even say, can you please give me a 2-minute summary of the book? Right? I say, if I can do that, why would I write a 200-page book? Right? So that is how the fast world is anyway, right? Jokes apart. So when we look at this kind of short attention span, people believe in what is being told, and then they start creating this self-kill. Because if somebody says somebody is doing something wrong, our first instinct to say, it is not correct. Right? It should not. There should not be discrimination, because it is a basic sense in us that discrimination should not be allowed. It's a basic sense in us that people should not unnecessarily attack somebody. In fact, in our book also we have quoted, if a child is given 2 chocolates, for example, the child may take it. Say if the same child is given 2 chocolates and the child next to it is given 4 chocolates, it has been demonstrated the child starts becoming resentful. It doesn't appreciate the 2 chocolates. Correct. Because they see the discrimination even at that level. That is why the colonial hate masters have started first by adjuring the community of Brahmins. Second is to say that, oh, these people have been the oppressor. Third is they have also discriminated against her. Fourth is they have denied us opportunities in education and others. So one by one, the false narratives have been built, so that the complete hate castle, so to speak, has been built, and we have to now start working on taking it out brick by brick, not by speaking hate against them. That doesn't help. Hate against hate is not the answer. We have to use facts and logic and appeal to the common public to say, these are the facts. Please give us 5 minutes of your time. You have Google now, you have this internet facility, phone is there with you. Please check those sources. At least please check the sources of when somebody says something. If somebody says education is being denied for 2000 plus years, please go read Dharamapalji's famous work on Beautiful Tree.
Correct.
That will tell you how the indigenous education system was. You don't have to take my word for it. But even in our book, we have extensively quoted Dharamapalji's work, which has been one of the most stellar work for many of us, to know that how the indigenous system we can be so proud of, how everybody got the education at that time.
He mentions that in 1820s itself, in the education system, there was only 12% Brahmins in those systems.
That's correct.
So everybody else was also part of it. It was not like they were denied that education.
That's correct, and in fact they quoted in, there are so many interesting facts which come, as you rightly pointed out. In one place, I think William Ward is the person who says that the teachers were mostly Shrudras and occasionally Brahmins.
Okay.
Right? He says that. And in, I think, one place, I think it was in Malabar region at that time, I think it was still coming under Madras, there were 808 students of astronomy. Then I was hoping to see, okay, astronomy means usually we address it to, maybe a lot of Brahmins may be doing the Jyotira Shastra and
Correct.
others, but actually only 78 were Brahmins. So we don't know where the rest of these people were.
What happened to all those?
Who were those extra
okay.
people, right? So, and medicine in Malabar, okay. So there is all these things that, Brahmins were dominating medicine, but when we read the history of it, in fact, we are trying to work on the next project on this, is to say how the medical system was, because in the Malabar region, just to complete, 194 students were there, I think, and of that, I think 31 were Brahmins. 31, 37, I think 31. So that is the number we are talking about. So what is the rest of the students? Population. Where do they come from?
Correct.
And I think in one place called, I think, Burdwan in Bengal, there were 639 teachers, of which only 369 were Kayasthas. I think some 100 plus only was Brahmins. So if we have teachers who are teaching to the class, that means that they have been educated. At least that much we can safely assume.
Correct.
Right? So this has been a very inclusive system, and the way it was working was the local community decides and they create that environment. And in Dharmapalji's work, there is one more way which says that in the 1800s, what was the English school attendance in Britain at that time they are talking about as a proportionate wise. In 1822 to 25, I think the period when we are comparing, their system has already started decaying because of the colonial issues.
Correct.
Even then, it was much higher than what it was in Britain. It was more inclusive, and there is a research which says that most of these schools were funded by the local community, and teachers were working part-time, right? And they will do other occupations. And there was one anecdote in one book which was, I think we have mentioned it in our book also, I think. The village Panditji or somebody, he will go and chase all these people in the morning, children, right, 7 to 8, 19, they will chase, and then they will start, once he has some number of students, they will start creating the class, and then by finish 10, they will finish, then the children will go assist their families, then they come back again. So it was a very utilitarian way, and it was very practical education. So I think we have a lot to be proud of in terms of our educational systems which exist at that time.
And I think even Mahatma Gandhi has quoted saying that the British, their main aim was to uproot our educational system because that was really strong. And so they have put a lot of work to take that out of its place.
That's correct. In fact, a lot of the communication which Dr. Dharmapalji was quoting is about how the British were trying to mold their educational system based on India. And as you rightly said, the beautiful tree, the book itself was because Gandhiji's famous word was that this beautiful tree was uprooted, its roots were inspected, but then they just let it lay bare, so that the whole tree got wasted.
And that book is available for free. You can just Google it and it's a PDF file. You can open, anybody can go and read it. So it's freely available. And the other thing, in 1850s, there was other concept that got pumped in was the Aryan Dravidian theory, right? The Aryan, it was disproved, right? Genetical research has been done where they have disproved it. They've said that all over India, the gene that determines us to be Indian is Indian, right? There is no traces of Aryan gene in our blood all over India. So that has been disproved, but that is still, like, in people's mind, they still have that split. They still look at as, oh, like light-skinned people, Aryans, dark-skinned people, Dravidians, or some traces of Dravidism. So where can we really eliminate that thought process?
Great question. I will look at one part of the question which we have looked at in our book, which is to say there is this concept of Orian theory. Right? Because I'm not going into the other part of, say, the Dravidian races, because to us it is out of scope because we are focusing on how the hate against Brahmins have been propagated.
Okay.
How it fits us is when we say a particular group of people came into India and then they started subjugating the Indian local population, the native population. Then we created the oppressor-oppression model, right? The oppressed and the oppression model. That's how the Brahmins have been cut off from the rest of the Indian society. So the Orian theory was a very useful one, and it also helped the colonial master to say that, hey, see, these guys have been invaded before, right? So now they're still not civilized. So we are again doing the civilizing mission. In a way, they were justifying their occupation as well. Right? That is history. On the Orian theory, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar has done extensive research on that, and he has talked about a few words. I think he is a man of very precise words. Right? His words were, the Orian theory is just based on pleasing assumptions, and it is just a narrative built on that thing. And he says it is a perversion of scientific investigation. And it also says the Orian theory is the proof of how hypothesis can be the poison of science. And these are very strong words coming from Dr. Ambedkar. And he has gone on to talk about how the entire construct has been done, and we have also dwelt about it in our book. And it's very surprising, I would say, that it all came from a single sentence which has been interpreted by Max Muller.
Correct.
So that's why people say, when there is an academic thing, why are we so much forcefully arguing with the academic version? Because academic theories in laboratories don't exist in ether. Sometimes they can go into the mainstream society and then create consequences which nobody can imagine of. Right? That particular sloka, there is only half the part of the sloka that only he has misinterpreted, which is anaso dasyo naruno vade nanidur yora mrunan vritra acha. That is the sentence. In that sloka, the anasa it can be interpreted as anas or anas. How we want to interpret it. An plus as also can be done. So traditionally, our commentators have interpreted it as with defect. They were speechless, because the last word in that same sloka says mridravacha, which is what is being called as having defective organs of speech. Okay. So when our commentators who traditionally have interpreted it that way, Max Muller has gone to say this is noseless. Right? So in the first part of the thing we are saying noseless, and then we are talking about speech here, so it doesn't make any sense. So we have kind of explained that, and from there a whole narrative has been built. That is how it is.
Okay. And also there's, I think, let's not get into the swastika and the Nazi symbol, right, the Hakenkreuz. But there's a lot of hate in that area also, right, we know that. But here's what I wanted to also talk about is briefly, so maybe can we jump into your explanation of the civilization battle?
Thank you. The civilization battle is different from a usual military battle. So we all know of the military wars which are being fought, and I think in the 21st century some of us can even see the live streaming of some of the action which is happening there, where people are getting killed and you can see bombs being dropped and others. Right? So there is a lot of action in a military war. It has a defined opponents. People on both sides know who they are and who their enemies are, number one. And there is a defined outcome which happens. Either there is a ceasefire or whether there is some victory, but it happens for a few months or maybe a few years, but it comes to a definite conclusion, or at least a ceasefire. Unlike a military battle, a civilizational battle does not look very obvious, and it can go for centuries. First of all, it doesn't have to happen in 1 century, or it doesn't have to happen in 20 years. There is no time frame, and in the initial phases, many people are not even aware that they are part of the battle. But as it progresses, at the end stage, it can turn very violent. Unlike a military battle, a civilizational battle can create huge amount of casualties, because then it becomes almost like a civil war at the end, and many communities can get massacred. So that is the difference in a civilizational battle. So that is the first point. Second part, when we look at in a civilizational battle for India and for the Bharat as such, the first is to say there is a othering, how one community is different from another. So there has been a foreign invasion, and their local have been suppressed. The second part of the battle is to create this oppressor-oppressed framework. Third part is to say there has been discrimination. The fourth part has been to say there has been denial of opportunities, and then there is a fifth part which is to do translations of scriptures, or to create a scriptural basis to say that all these scriptures are saying certain things which today have no place in a civilized society. Right? We call it as, there is a technical term which is known as exegetical translation vis-a-vis opposite to a eisegetical translation. So I won't get into the techniques of it, but simplistically say exegetical means I read what is there in the text, I try to read out. Eisegetical translation is what is I am thinking, I am trying to read it into the text. So when we talked about Max Muller, what he did was to come up with, at that time the nose theory was going, how nose can be a ethnographic indicator or whatever they call it. So he was trying to read something into that. So he said Anas can be called as a noseless. Right? So that is a classic example of it. Then the last is to say the environmental. Right? That you will start seeing slowly restrictions being put out, saying that some of these things are not environmental friendly, some of your actions are not environmental friendly. So one complete encircling of the belief system, practice systems, and those who are traditionally practicing it. So this is how the civilizational battle starts happening in multiple fronts.
But can we deny really, like at least in the last 100 years, that there was some sort of suppression in the other caste by the Brahmins?
Was there, first let us put it out that any discrimination or suppression in any form has to be condemned. Right? So even accidentally we don't want to come across as being being kind of supporting such things. Right? So let's keep it out of the door. We are not supporting any discrimination in any form.
Okay.
Now, having said that, if we go back into the Indian history, we had the British colonial rule. Let's not go reverse. Independent India is secular, we all know. Okay. Then we go to the British rule. In the British rule, were Brahmins having control over the institutions? No.
Oh.
Right? Okay. So then there were a period from 10th century onwards to the 17th, 18th century, where Brahmins having exclusive control of institutions, were they ruling many parts of India?
No.
Answer is no.
They did not have wealth also.
Okay. So now go slightly above. So we will go into the period of say 6th century to 10th century. One can argue there, saying that there could have been something there. Okay. That is the Buddhist Jainist influence at that point of time, and then we are talking about Brahmins were also there. Then all different faiths were there at that point of time. But did Brahmins have exclusive control? We are not sure. Right? And then we go to the Vedic period. In our Vedic literature, we don't find the discrimination. So it is all there. So it is not scripturally said to us. And so from a practicing Brahmin's point of view, the Veda is our pramana. Right? With the unquestionable belief for us in Vedas is the essential part of being Brahmins. That is our first thing. So when the scriptures don't discriminate and Vedas, then there is nothing to support discrimination. Now, coming to the modern terms, right? So one is our belief. Then people can say, "Sir, this is your word against other word." A modern historian, considered an eminent historian by many liberal society members, Shri Irfan Habibji, I think he has written in one of the books that it is particularly doubtful if the evolution and spread of the caste system can be primarily attributed to Brahminical inspiration. So there is no primary evidence as to say that this whole thing has been done by Brahmins and that this whole thing has been controlled by them. They didn't have any institutional power. They didn't have any political power. They didn't have any social power as we speak. So some of the texts which we go in and then read will say that, oh, they have oppressed 90% of the population. Then the question is, why would 90% of the population accept them? They are doing that. That's right. Even if you go into an office environment or something, if somebody is kind of, say, doing certain things bad, then the other team members will politely request him or her to behave. And if they don't behave, they will have an escalation process. They will not sit and get bullied, correct? So to speak, in an office environment. So how come Brahmin is able to do all this control of so many people for so long centuries? So if you go and read some of the Western scholars on their theories, some will say it is magic. Brahmins had Atharvan Ved techniques and then they had magical inspiration. Okay. So then the next question comes is, okay, see if somebody claims they have magical powers, wouldn't our ancestors have demanded proof? Can you please show? You say you have all these great supernatural powers. So can you show evidence? So for us, we are into this search of finding out exactly what is this data which is being given to us, which says that Brahmins have done so many things which has been claimed. without any political power, economic power, financial power. And most of our smritis and other texts are saying that who is the best Brahmin? The best Brahmin is a person who doesn't even have food stored for the next meal. He is supposed to be ritualistically begging. So why would somebody controlling so much of the population ask their own person to go literally live what we call as the Vunjavritti, right? So in modern terms they call it begging, but it is not actually begging. It is actually seeking alms in a politeful way to the society, saying that we are doing the Kainkariya for you and please support us, right? That is called Vunjavritti. So why would they ask us to do Vunjavritti when they are controlling so much of political power? So it is a myth. And so we have to kind of go and then logically explain it to the population, and that is what we and our team, we call ourselves Saptarishi team, and we are into this to say that let's go and then take all this one by one. And it is like a spider's web today, 200 years of colonial history. You can't change it overnight. So we have to take out all those drishtis in a way, decolonize it, and then say, let's start looking at it from a fresh perspective. Right, and find out. And if there is something which has been done wrong, we have to acknowledge it. There is no two ways about it. Okay. But today we don't have that evidence, and it is all based on circular logic.
So now maybe let's talk about the Purusas Suta, right? It's quoted many times saying that in Purusas Suta, the Brahmins are the head of the Lord and then Sudras are the feet of the Lord. Right, I think a lot of people understand it as why should a Brahmin be the head, right? Head is like more dignified, I guess, whereas the feet is not as dignified. So why that difference? So what would your say be on that?
That's a great question, and if it's okay with you, can I elaborate this point to your viewers, taking a bit of time?
Sure, please.
Thank you. I think this is very important because this is where the othering process is systematically happening. It's our view, and we are saying that because of following reason. First is, as we said, the Orian Theory was to create Brahmins as the outsiders. Then they have to be shown as oppressors, right? And that is being done along with this to say that there has been a discrimination, right? The oppressor part is they call that dasyus, and that's we don't want to go into that now, but that has been done. The third layer is now what we call as the discriminated. So Purusas Suta is being quoted on. Right? In the Purusas Suta, first is there is a Purusha, and the Purusha is in the belly, and from different parts of the body, the four varnas are coming. First of all, the word varna itself is not used in the Purusas Suta. The exact statement, shloka will go like this: Brahmanosya mukamasit bahura janyakridaya uru dadatyayat vaisya padbyam sudro ajayate. This is the, so from the feet padbyam sudro ajayate. Now, Brahmanosya mukamasit, and the mukha can be interpreted as
Face.
Mouth or face. Now, from face they were transformed it into head. Right? Okay, so it's a mouth actually. Now, when we look at the feet, it doesn't say the Purusha is in a bali position, in a horizontal or a vertical position. So we don't know whether it is there. But when a person is lying down, it is not necessarily that the feet has to be at a lower position. Now they say it is a lowly and dirty. And in our culture, we don't see the feet as lowly and dirty. Right? Because all of us would have read the Ramayana as a child. What does the Bharata do when Lord Rama goes to the Aranya? He doesn't take his Krida and keep it. He takes his Paduka and keeps it. So there is a lot of reverence attached to the earth. And in the same sutta, it also continues and says the earth is coming from the feet. Okay. So this is where what we call as how meaning is read into the text. Right? First is to say it was in a lower position, hence it is a lower position. Then second is to say there is dirty, because it doesn't come in our drishti. It is not in our Indian drishti to say the feet is this, because we all do pada puja. Right? To our and when we take, how do we take blessings from a person? We go and touch their feet. Right? So this is the second part of it, how they have systematically created a hate. And the question which anybody has to ask, you don't have to go through all these things. First is to ask, if it all coming from the same person, how is it a discrimination? If somebody wanted to really discriminate, they should have said this person has got this thing, all these people are outside. They would have said that in as many words. Okay. This is done. Now the third part, interesting part comes. How it has been systematically done, in my opinion, and I give you the give to the viewers to decide. There is a Upanishad called Brihadaranya Upanishad.
Okay.
In the Brihadaranya Upanishad, again what we call this Varna Srishti is mentioned. And there the text goes like this. It says, first there was a Brahman, and then it was not completely, it was a fire and it became Brahman, it did not flourish. Then it took the form of a Shudra. So the exact text will go like, I won't say the full thing, but at least the part, Brahmava itamakra asit tadatmana eva veda aham brahmasmriti, that is the first quote. It starts with the aham brahmasmriti, which is the quote of the Mahavakya, we call it. I'll come to that later. Then the next sloka says, Brahmava itamakra asit ekameva thade gagni channabhyabhavade tasreyo rupam atyasrudyatah shatram. So first is because it was not completing, it became Shatra, which is the Kshatriyas. Then it says, Channaiva Vebhavade Tashaudram Varnam Asrajata Bhushana Miyammai Bhushe Yagnehi Dagne Sarvam Bhushyati Yaditam Kincha. So this says that it became Shaudram, and which is the Shau is actually the Shudram, it became the Shau there because of the ambiguity which is coming. It's a Sanskrit grammar. In Tamil we have this, right? Like that. So the grammar, Sanskrit grammar says that. Now, the next, it is very important here to say that this is all coming in sequence, it is all coming from the same body, and the text continues to say that, right? So it becomes Dharma. Okay. Now the text is interesting because this text gives you a sequence without saying head, toe, no discrimination, so that part is taken care of. Now your viewers will have three questions. First is, what is this? This may be some random text you are bringing it up. Right? Oh, this is Brihadaranya Upanishad, which is part of our Shukla Yajurveda, sacred Shukla Yajurveda, and it comes in the text where this is a Brahma Vakya. Okay, sorry, you can possibly edit it. So this text is not a random text, it is from the Shukla Yajurveda corpus, sacred Shukla Yajurveda corpus, where this has the Mahavakya, we call it. The Mahavakya is what we call as Jiva Brahma Aikya Bodhaka Vakya. And that is Aham Brahmasmi. So you might have heard in even the Samaveda we have this Tattvamasi. So wherever we talks about the individual and this, we call it Mahavakya. So and this text is also not coming anywhere. It is coming right before this, and then there is a Srishti thing which I talked about. So they couldn't have missed it. Secondly, the time period. The time period, it is very comparable because the later stage of the Rig Veda to this, as per the Western Indologists. To me, everything is Anati. I won't put a timeline into the sacred Vedas. But for the Western people, they may say they have given a timeline, and it is actually coming into this very closer time frame, contemporary literature we can take. Now the question comes, why have so much of academic literature written on Purusas Suta talking about this caste, and then they talk about this hierarchical model when the Brihadaranya Upanishad was not talked about?
Correct.
So there is a question all of us would have to ask. Now I will make it slightly more interesting. That word I use, Shreyo Rupam. First it started with Brahmava Idamakra Asit Ekameva Tadekigni Sannave Bodhi. So the Shreyo Rupam, that is how the Shatra came. Shreyo Rupam means Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan sir, and he is our former president sir, and he and many scholars have called it as excellent form. But then you can also call it a superior form. Okay. Because there is Sanskritam, we can say Shreyas and Shreshta. Shreshta can be called as the excellent form, and then this can be called as a superior form. In some scholars even called it a superior form. If you take it as superior, now how does the text go? First there was a Brahman, fire, it became Brahman. The Brahman could not flourish. It's all it says. Then it became
Kshatriya.
Took a better form, superior form of Kshatriya. Now the other two are saying it did not flourish, it became Vaishya, it did not flourish, it became Shudra. Then it says it did not flourish here, and it took a Shreyo Rupam. The word Shreyo Rupam comes in the fifth sentence to say it became Dharma. And it says Dharma means Shatrasya Shatra. Okay. And also there are two words which are coming in here. When it talks about Shatra, it says Dasmat Shatras Paramnasti, meaning nothing is above Shatra. So Brahmin cannot be above Shatra in the triangle as per this text. And now if you supply the missing word of superior or better form into the other two lines, now the table has to change. Either we have to call the caste table as this way. First is dharma, because dharma is also satrasya satram, and it says dasmat dharmas paramnasti. Right? So there is, dharma is also in the top, then you have the shatra, then the other three varnas. One can show it this way. But if you want to read more into the text, like what the Western scholars got done, logically we can say that the other two are supposed to have been superior, because it was getting a better form. So then what happens? Dharma first, Shudra next, then comes Vaishya, then comes Kshatriya, then comes Brahmana.
So Brahmana is actually at the bottom. He's
Of the table. This is what the text is saying. Right? So, and even either way you can take it as the whole thing gets reversed, or at the minimum they should have shown Dharma and Shatra, and then the other three are here without showing any distinction. But they went and created a triangle. I think almost every Indian would have been exposed to this four triangle, which is the top and the bottom, and then this saying. So we don't see that in the text, and at least a honest scholarship would have demanded that when they talk about all this, they should have at least shown this also. At the minimum, saying that there is an alternate view which was existing in that time. Why was it not there?
somewhere we also lack that knowledge, right? I think as Hindus, we should be able to go read our own text and not trust somebody else to give us that explanation.
Absolutely correct. I think you are absolutely correct. And then some of the logic is also we have to question. Like one of the eminent Indologists says that the Shudras were added below. And what is the logic? Because there is one explanation of Vaishya which says that Vaishya means complete. Okay. So we have to use our logic to first ask the question: if something is complete, why would Shudra get added in the bottom? Why can't it be above?
Correct.
Or if something is complete, what says that these two are above? So these are logical questions which one need to, but they take it as proof, right? We say that, oh, this is what it is, and there is this what we call as the colonial Indology fans who start defending this to say that no, this has been quoted here, this has been quoted here, but that is why we have given an alternate text. I'm not even just disputing the Purusas Suta version, because that can be always said. People can always say no, it is your interpretation. But question is, why was Brihadaranyaka Upanishad not discussed yet?
Correct. So let me jump into the next question, which is relating to the caste. So how is caste seen in countries outside of India?
Oh, actually, caste is not even Indian, correct? So caste has to be seen outside of India.
Correct.
So it actually came from, I think, there was a class system. Correct? What we read about is that there was a class system. And when the class system was in Europe, there were lords in some places, and they were the aristocrats, and there was this nobility, they call it. And then there was the serf, the term they used. And then there was actually for sort of untouchability form, I think they called it Kego.
Peasants.
Kego is the term which was used for a class of people who were almost discriminated against. Even the serf had to take permission from the landlord, even if he was to change. Even if he or she as a child, that child is again has to work for them. So this
hierarchy was in the Western system, and they have really put it onto our plate as well.
They mapped the class into our Varna Jati system. What we had is the Varna Jati system. So it never was there. So that is why so much of confusion, and sometimes when many people talk about caste, we also have to give them the benefit of doubt, because we are all looking at it like something which has been given to us 200 years. We are trying to make sense of something which existed in a very different way, and we are trying to be like the colonial guy now, and then trying to think from his viewpoint, which is alien to us.
Correct.
So all our request is, let's start decolonizing all this and start having a fresh look at this. To say that why not we start afresh? For example, when you talked about the Brihadaranyaka Sutra, right? Is there a possibility that the whole order was reversed as per the text? Or at least is there a possibility that there was no discrimination? Was it a possibility that the whole thing was just 4 different functions which are being described? And once you start doing that, we start appreciating the beauty of our text also, because our text says that why is Dharma Shatrasya Shatram? Because of Dharma, even a weak person, if he feels that he has got the Dharma, the righteousness on his side, he can take on the stronger opponent.
Correct.
That has been talked to us by thousands of years back, Anati, from that time, people have talked about equality. Why dharma is required in the land, so that the might is not the right. So start looking at our text from at least from a non-colonial viewpoint. Right? Give it an ordinary sense. Sorry, I digress a bit. I'm coming back to the caste system. I think it was a word which was given by Portuguese. I think they called it casta, as you might already know. I'm sure many of us know that this was something which was an alien lens which was fitted into that. And then colonials wanted to put the invasion into that. Colonials wanted to put the race theory into that. Then they wanted the oppressed people. So it became a free for all, right? Like what we call in khichdi in many places, right? So you can put whatever vegetables we want into that, right? And then we still make it khichdi. So whatever they wanted to, they started writing it into our text. And then we started actually taking it up because of the Western form of education. We didn't have a way to check back. Now we have to check back.
Okay, so from this book, who do you think are your readers? Like I'm hearing it's not just Brahmins, it's literally all Hindus who really want to understand what's happening here, right? Those should be the readers. But from your perspective, what are you trying to tell your readers overall, briefly?
Thank you. I think our viewers, as you rightly said, is Hindus, and I would also go a step further to say all well-wishers of the Bharatiya civilization. It is not just for a particular community, it is for the entire Bharatiya civilization, and as I explained, it is one of the lost links to the ancient world which we have lost. Right? Hence, our request to your viewers will be please have an open mind about how our history and our scriptures are being talked about. At least now that in this age of internet and Google, please check the sources before you react, right? And ask for the primary source. Find time to go and do that. Number two, please approach your dharmacharyas. Right? Whoever maybe sampradaya you are coming from, there will be a dharmacharya. Go to your dharmacharya and then get clarification from them. 3. There is a petition which is going on today in our website, saptarishi.org. We call it www.saptarishi.org, against hate speech targeting Brahmins. So please see if you can support it. You can review it. The petition is there. The details are there. We have provided the evidences. So hate has to be stopped. Right? There is no space for hate in a civilized society. I think we can all agree to that. Now something is happening to one part of the family. I call it like a giant family. Right? We are all one huge, big, giant family. Something is happening over here. So why don't we get together to address this first, right? Before it starts engulfing all of us. And 4th is, wherever possible, try to do a little bit of dharmic contribution yourself in terms of how you can spend time, because the whole essence of our dharma can be said as parupakaram idam shariram. So wherever we can do a dharmic activity, however small, there is no such thing like small or big, please do your contribution there. Stay close to the dharma. Then dharmo rakshati rakshata. That is what our ancients have told us, and we have to do.
Thank you so much. This has been a very enlightening discussion. So we hope you could in the future as well in your endeavors. Thank you
so much. Thank you to everyone.